Hello and welcome back to the Business Creators Community Book Club. My name is Helen Collard, and we are looking at the Business Creators Community book for June 2026, which is TA Today by Ian Stewart and Vann Joins. So, hello, I'm really glad you're here for this one because today we're going somewhere a little different. So, we're not talking about strategy or systems or how to grow your email list. Today, we are going inwards. And I promise you, what we're about to explore is going to make a lot of things click into place. So, as I've said, this month we're reading TA Today, a new introduction to transactional analysis by Ian Stewart and Vann Joins. And I want to be upfront with you. When I first picked this book for the book club this month, I wondered how best to share it with you. I thought it was going to be quite difficult because it looks like a very clinical, psychology textbook-ish type of book, but it isn't. It's warm, it's readable, and it's one of those books where you find yourself underlining things and thinking, oh, so that's why I do that. It's also one of those books you don't have to read in order. You can just dip into the bits you need. So, what is transactional analysis? It was first developed by a psychiatrist called Eric Berne back in the 1950s and 1960s. You might have heard of his famous book called Games People Play. That came out in 1964 and became a bestseller. Berne had this gift for making psychological ideas accessible. He believed that people could understand themselves and that understanding was the beginning of change. Now, I first came across transactional analysis years ago in the workplace. I worked for a very good US employer who introduced us to some really helpful concepts, the 7 habits of highly effective people, and the work of Berne and the framework of transactional analysis, how it helps us to understand ourselves and how to use it in the workplace. It was a game changer. It's a game changer for me then, and it's been a favourite book ever since that I've picked up time and time again. I still pick it up regularly, and I'm still learning something new from it every time I pick it up. So what Stewart and Joins have done in TA Today is to take Berne's original framework and update it, expand it, and present it in a way that works for anyone, not just therapists or counsellors. This is genuinely one of those books that works for everyday life, for business, for relationships, for understanding why you respond the way you do under pressure. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Because if you've ever launched something and felt like a fraud, if you've ever sat in a room of other business owners and wondered when someone was going to figure you out, that you don't actually know what you're doing, if you've ever heard a voice in your head telling you you're not quite enough, you're not experienced enough, you're not qualified enough, not ready yet, then this episode is for you. We're going to talk about where that voice actually comes from. Let me start with something that might feel almost too simple, but stay with me. So when you were born, you had no beliefs about yourself, none. You had needs, warmth, food, comfort, connection. But you had no opinions about your own worth, your own capability, your own right to take up space in the world. You were, in the language of TA Today, a completely open system. Everything you came to believe about yourself, literally everything, you absorbed from the world around you. Now think about that for a moment. Every single belief you hold about whether you're clever or not, whether you're likable or not, whether you're the kind of person who succeeds or the kind of person who struggles, all of it was information that came in from outside of you in those early years of life. Before you had the cognitive ability to evaluate it, question it, or decide whether you agreed with it. That's extraordinary when you really sit with it. Stewart and Joins describe this as one of the foundational insights of transactional analysis, that as children, we are what they call egocentric in the truest sense. Not selfish Egocentric, meaning we believe we are the cause of everything that happens around us. If our parent is stressed, we think it's because of us. If there's shouting in the house, we think we caused it. If we're told to be quiet, we conclude that our voice is too much. We draw conclusions, and those conclusions become beliefs, and those beliefs shape everything. So here's where I want to get a little personal with you, because I think this is where it starts to land. Think back to primary school. Think back to that classroom, to the teachers you had, to the things that were said to you, either directly or in front of the class, or in a report card, or in the way someone looked at you when you got an answer wrong. Maybe you were told that you were the clever one, or the autistic one, or the difficult one, or the one that tried hard but wasn't quite there. Maybe you were the responsible one, or the dramatic one, or the shy one. And here's the thing, nobody meant for those labels to become your identity. They were throwaway moments often, but you were a child, and children are meaning-making machines. You took those moments and built a story. TA Today talks a lot about what it calls injunctions, the messages we receive, often unspoken, about who we are and what we're allowed to do or be. Things like, don't be important, don't succeed, don't show off, don't feel, don't ask for too much, don't be you. These aren't things that most parents or teachers would ever consciously say. They come through in tone, in what gets praised and what gets ignored, in what causes tension in the house, in the stories told about other family members. Your uncle was always showing off, in the way ambition is spoken about at the dinner table. And we took all of it in, all of it, with no filter, because we didn't have one yet. I want to talk to you about something I think that is the most important thing in this entire episode. That voice in your head, the one that says, you're not ready, you don't know enough, who do you think you are? That voice is not you. It's not your instinct. It's not wisdom. It's not a helpful friend keeping you safe. It's a recording. In TA Today, Stewart and Joyce describe something called the internal parent. And we're going to get to the full parent, adult, child model in a moment. But I want to introduce you to this idea first because I think it unlocks something really important. As children, we internalized the voices of the people who raised us, our parents, our grandparents, our teachers. We took their words, their tone, their expressions of approval and disapproval, and we built an internal version of them inside our own minds. Stewart and Joyce call this the parent ego state. And here's the thing about that internal parent. It's largely stuck in time. It's running programs that were written for a child who was small, dependent, and needed to fit in to survive. It doesn't know you're a grown adult now. It doesn't know you've built a business or raised children or navigated some genuinely hard things. It's still running its old script. So when you sit down to write that email or record that video or put yourself forward for something, and that voice says, no, 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 not yet. Who are you to do this? That's your internal parent, not your truth. So this is one of the most liberating things I have ever read, because the moment you understand where that voice comes from, you stop treating it as the final word. I know so many people in this community who deal with imposter syndrome, and it comes up particularly when they're doing something new, starting to show up online, putting a price on their knowledge, calling themselves an expert. And I want to offer you a reframe today from the work of Berne as explained by Stewart and Joyce. Imposter syndrome is not a sign that you're actually a fraud. It's a sign that the gap between your internal story and your current reality has grown large enough to cause tension. Let me explain what I mean. The child you were the one who absorbed all those messages about who she was and wasn't, developed what TA today calls a life script, a kind of unconscious story about how life goes and what you're allowed to have and what your role is in this world. If the messages you received were largely affirming, you're capable, you can do this, your voice matters, you got this, then your life script supports ambition and visibility. When you do something big, it feels congruent, it fits. But if the messages were more complicated, if ambition was associated with arrogance, or standing out was associated with being too much, or success in the family felt like something that only happened to other people, then your script may have a ceiling on it, an invisible ceiling. And when you push above that ceiling, when you do something that exceeds what your internal script said was allowed, the alarm goes off. Your internal parent sounds the siren. Who do you think you are? The body responds with anxiety, and we label that anxiety imposter syndrome. But it isn't about what you know. It's about what you were told or not told about what you were allowed to become. That's the root of imposter syndrome. And knowing that changes everything, because the answer isn't to acquire more qualifications, it's to go back and examine these messages, to understand where the script came from, and this is the hopeful part, to consciously rewrite it. Now, I want to introduce you very gently to the central framework in TA today, the 3 ego states that form the basis of transactional analysis. Stewart and Joins call them the parent, the adult, and the child. Now, these aren't ages and they're not roles, they are states of being, ways that we show up in any given moment, have their own thoughts, feelings, and ways of relating. Let me walk you through each one briefly, and I want you to notice where you recognize yourself. The parent ego state is, as we've touched on, the internalized voice of the adults who raised us. It can show up in 2 ways: as a nurturing presence, caring and protective, or as a critical presence, controlling and judgmental. Most of us have both. The parent is where the shoulds and the musts tend to live. It's where the rule book is kept, and crucially, it was written by someone else. The child ego state is our original self, the one that existed before all of the conditioning. It's where our creativity lies, our spontaneity, our genuine emotional responses. It's also where our wounded responses live, the adapted behaviours we learned in order to get approval, to stay safe, to manage difficult adults. The child who learned to be small or good or funny or invisible, that's child ego state territory. And then there's the adult ego state. So the adult ego state is the one I really want you to hear. The adult ego state is our here and now thinking self. It's the part of us that can assess a situation as it actually is, not through the lens of old messages, not through childhood fear, but clearly and in the present. It reasons, it evaluates, it makes choices. It can look at the critical voice and say, I hear you, and I'm choosing differently. Here's the part that stopped me in my tracks when I read it in TA today. We don't fully access the adult ego state until much later in life. As children, we literally cannot. The cognitive development required to evaluate information critically, to challenge authority, to say, but is that true? That develops over time, which means all of those early messages went in completely unchecked. We were just receiving, absorbing, and filing. And then we grew up and we started trying to build things, businesses, relationships, lives, while all of these old files were still running in the background. The great gift of understanding transactional analysis is that it gives us a way to bring our adults into the room, to say, that message was written a long time ago by people who were doing their best, but who were also running their own old program. And to ask with real curiosity rather than shame, what do I actually believe when I'm being fully myself? I want to bring this back to your business because this is the business creators community, and everything we explore here has to be practical and relevant. If you've ever hesitated to raise your prices, even though you know your work is good, that hesitation deserves a closer look. Is it coming from your adult's clear assessment of the market? Or is it coming from an old message about not being allowed to want too much? If you've ever written a post, felt good about it, and then deleted it before you hit publish, that impulse is worth examining. What was the voice that said no? Where did it learn that your words weren't safe enough to put out into the world? If you've ever sat in a room of other coaches or consultants and felt like everyone else had it figured out except you, that feeling is your child ego state, scanning the room the way it used to scan the classroom, looking for signals, comparing, drawing conclusions. None of this is your fault. None of it means you're broken. It means you're human. And you were formed by your experiences, like every single person in that room. But, and this is the whole point, you can start to notice it. You can name it. You can bring your adults in. That's what TA Today offers. Not a quick fix, not a hack, but a genuinely powerful way of understanding yourself that once you have it, you can't unsee. So I'm going to leave it there for today because I want you to have space to sit with what we've covered rather than overloading you with more. In our next book club episode, we're going to go deeper into the parent, adult, child model. We'll look at how these states show up in your transactions with other people, in the conversations that go wrong, in the patterns that keep repeating. It's going to be brilliant. For now, I'd like you to do just one thing, just one. Think about one belief you hold about yourself in business. Something along the lines of, I'm not really an expert, or people are going to see through me, or I don't deserve to charge that much. And ask yourself gently, where did I learn that? How old was I when that became my story? You don't need to fix anything today, just notice. If this has landed for you, I'd really love to know. Come and share in the Business Creators community. It's a genuinely safe and brilliant space for this kind of conversation, and I'd love to hear what's coming up for you. The book is TA Today, A New Introduction to Transactional Analysis by Ian Stewart and Vann. I'll link it in the description. It's accessible, it's incredibly well written, and it's the kind of book you'll return to. So thank you so much for being here. Take care of yourself this week, and I'll see you in the community.